Through the years, the fight for the basic rights of immigrants has always been a prevalent issue. Although progress has been made, there is still much left up in the air for immigrants regarding their lives and futures. The only thing that has not changed throughout this battle for the equal treatment of many immigrants is the extreme bravery and resilience of the individuals who are affected by the ever-changing rights of those who are foreign-born. In the 1982 Supreme Court case of Plyler v. Doe, the families challenging the school system and the discrimination of many demonstrated these traits of strength through all of the hatred. They helped to further the fight and honor all of those foreign-born dreamers who came before them and all of their children to come. Without the Plyler v. Doe case, the American education system would be nothing like it is today, and the many immigrant families would not have nearly as many opportunities as they do. In the 1960s, the civil rights movement was in full effect. This was a time where people began rallying for the equal rights of all people, regardless of their race or nationality. At this time, the way immigration was handled was using the original quota system created in the 1920s. This system was highly discriminatory as it strongly favored those from Northern Europe. Many rallied for a change to the injustice of this system, including John F. Kennedy. President Kennedy was very supportive of immigrants, even stating, "Everywhere immigrants have enriched and strengthened the fabric of American life." President John F. Kennedy began reassessing the quota as he felt it was an unfair system, but unfortunately passed away before any bills were passed. However, him beginning to look into these laws led to Congress debating them, which led to the Immigration and Naturalization Act being passed by President Lyndon B. Johnson in October of 1965. This act allowed a great influx of minorities in America, which ended up greatly changing the U.S. population by the end of the 20th century. With easier access to the United States, many families from Mexico saw their chance at a new life filled with endless opportunities and made their way across the border. This is when families such as those involved in the Plyler v. Doe case came over. However, being legally allowed into the United States can be an extremely difficult process, if not impossible for many. To be allowed into the country, there are only 3 possible ways you can do so. If you are employed here for family reunification reasons, or if you have humanitarian protection. These things can be very hard to come by if you are just a regular immigrant with a desire to come to the United States. This is the main factor as to why so many immigrants enter the country illegally. When Mexican immigrants came to the United States, many of them ended up moving into Texas and California, which created severe security problems for those states. A large number of immigrants were undocumented citizens, so when a criminal offense occurred, the United States had no way of dealing with them, as immigration control was not strict until 2001 when the Department of Homeland Security was put into place after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. So, this lack of structure when it came to immigrants in America resulted in confusion between good and bad immigrants. Still, this is an issue today due to discrimination towards immigrants because of events like 9/11. Some people still make the assumption that all immigrants are bad based on horrific incidents that some immigrants were involved in. This makes residing in the United States as an immigrant, especially an undocumented one, who is still a lawful citizen that helps the economy and is just in search of a better life, extremely difficult. Back in the 1960s and 70s, there was still a lot of prejudice towards minorities, and there was a newly found prejudice towards immigrants because some of them posed a threat to security. In areas where there was a large immigrant population, such as Texas and California, this discrimination was even more evident. This brings us to the Plyler v. Doe Supreme Court case, where discrimination turned into utter violation of the constitutional rights of these young immigrants. In 1977, a group of Mexican students of Tyler, Texas, brought about a class action lawsuit against James Plyler, the superintendent of the Tyler Independent School District and the district as a whole. In 1975, Texas as a state began denying enrollment to any immigrant students who were not legally admitted to the country. In 1977, the Tyler Independent School District took it a step further by requiring those students to pay tuition if they desired admission. As it barred this group of students from attending school, it forced them to take legal action as their rights were being compromised. Once they finally had the chance to make their case, a federal appeals court approved their suit to pass on to a larger court as the case dealt with the violation of constitutional rights. The case eventually found its way to the Supreme Court. With a 5-4 rule, the final verdict of the case ended up being that the students should be allowed to attend any U.S. public schools without having to pay for what should be a free education. This decision was made based on the fact that the Tyler Independent School District's enrollment requirements contradicted the 14th Amendment, or the Equal Protection Clause, being, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. When we asked Jose and Lydia Lopez's son, Alfredo Lopez, about the case that allowed him an education in America, he says he didn't know much about the case at the time. I was surprised because I never knew the outcome. I found out through an LA Times reporter that came down to do an interview with me in 1994 during the Prop 187 in California. He informed me that the case had made it all the way to the Supreme Court. However, when we asked him about the impact of the case, he felt that it had made a significant difference. In regards to immigrants' futures, if the case had never happened, he stated, they would probably be stuck in low-wage jobs and never really know the American dream of having an education and the opportunities that an education could bring. The majority of the children never get an education. They are forced to work to help support their families, and many never know a real education. When we asked Mr. Lopez about DACA and the possibility of it being repealed, he expressed his concern as it could mean taking away all that his parents fought for the rights of immigrants. When we asked him what he thinks they are having to go through, he stated, they will have a much tougher time because they have been here for a lot longer time and most don't know any other life outside of the USA. It's probably much worse because DACA is an immigrant issue and the reality is being forced to leave the country. We were just fighting for the right to public education. With DACA and its longevity being a prominent issue at the moment, all that was fought for in the Plyler versus Doe case could be lost. If this case had never taken place, many immigrants in the U.S. would not lead the lives they do today and would not be able to help shape the country into the nation that it is today. Those children involved in DACA would not have the education they have and maybe not have even come to the United States, as many parents brought their young children over in hopes of them being educated so they could lead the lives their parents never had the chance at. Through this case being won by the strong immigrants who are being deprived of their rights, this nation gained so many bright minds, while millions of children received futures they would never have had back in their home countries. It was the courage of these families in the Plyler versus Doe case that created futures and touched the lives of so many. It is the courage and bravery like this that makes the United States the great country that it is, has been, and will continue to be. It is the courage and bravery like this that can stand up to conflict and reach compromise.